That is 50% green stuff and 50% millipede, and then I took like flour or baking soda, put it on a flat piece of glass, and I just started rolling it out. And I waited probably about 40 minutes for it to set up a little bit, so it was a little bit thicker. The green stuff, the duro inside of the millipede will allow you to get really flat, really thin things, but then it's really brittle afterwards, and it'll also start cracking at a certain point. If you put the green stuff in with it, it has an elasticity, something like that, whatever. It's like elastic, and it will allow it to bend just a little bit, and it also holds it together while you're flattening it out really thin. So I flattened it out really thin, ripped off the bottom part of this flag, and then added it, just put it down on the bottom, but it's so thin that it like drapes like fabric.
Green stuff is that stuff on the tube?
Yeah, it's the duro. It's the yellow.
Thinking of spot
yellow
putty.
blue.
It's the yellow.
When you say green stuff, you're talking about duro two-part?
Yeah, the yellow blue
okay.
two-part epoxy. I assume it would work with other putties that have similar properties. It seems like all these putties mix together pretty well, even though technically the duro and the millipede, when you mix it, feels completely different. You're like, there's no way. This thing feels like plastic. This thing feels like a clay. You put them together and suddenly they become one. So it is what it is. You can also, but yeah, so basically that's how I got the flags like super thin. Then I just kind of coaxed them into place. I think I'm going to probably rip them off, break them off of the little wires that I have it holding on, and re-sculpt a new thing that goes over the top of them so it looks a little bit better. I just did that so they'd hang right, and I just want to make it look really clean and old and dirty at the same time. So, but yeah, so that's what I'm working on this year. Most of my new stuff, my older stuff was all done all by hand. This model and this model were done just straight paintbrush. This model and this model and that model are all airbrush. Started with airbrush. So I pretty much airbrush everything now to start with. An example of what one of my figures might look like at the start of the airbrushing is this. You can see that I have lots of contrast in my lights and my darks all the way around. What I try to do is I don't try to airbrush the exact, like this girl was supposed to be shades of white. So I added a little bit of purpley hues into her shadows just to add some color interest. And then from the top, I sprayed like a grayish white, like it's a Vallejo silver gray. Any non-white color will do, because I want to be able to, when I highlight from there, I need to go somewhere. And if I'm already at the top of my scale, there's nowhere to go. So, especially on something that's white, you don't want to go all the way to white, because then you're going to have to actually dumb it back down to bring it back up again. It's just, that's too much work. So that's kind of how I start. I mean, it's nothing exciting, but it will turn exciting as I paint it. The other thing I've learned on airbrushing is I used to just airbrush, like I would airbrush this figure and it would have just been her body, and then the gun would have had no airbrushing on it at all. You know, if she had her arms out or whatever, hair, I would not touch that. And what I found was I learned that I started airbrushing everything, and it's kind of like a pre-shade and pre-highlight. Even though like her hair may be green when I finish, I still have color cues from the white that tell me where the lights and the shadows are going to be, especially if I've done directional lighting, which I really like doing, having a light source come from one side or the other. Like on this model especially, you can see the light source is definitely coming from there. So I choose the side of the face that I think is most interesting, and that's where I'll have my main source of light coming from. You could also do zenithal lighting, which is directly on top, and it's super boring. That's my own opinion. Of course, that being said, I taught this kid how to do that at this contest. He showed me his models. I told him, hey, have one side or the other be brighter. Went back in his hotel room, painted all night, did it. It was beautiful. I was like, wow, this kid got it, you know. The other two judges that were helping me judge the contest had no effect on them at all. They didn't even care. So I was like, but he was excited because that's how he wanted to paint. And I think having dramatic lighting is a lot more fun than having just realistic lighting. Everyone wants to be so realistic, and there's got to be a little bit where you can let the art out of you and have it look really cool. So, not saying that having just direct sunlight over the top is no good, because I've seen plenty of models that look fantastic with that. But I like having that dramatic, boom, this side of the face is much darker than this, or much brighter than this side of the face. Like, visibly you can see it, and it just creates a lot of interest, because now you're looking at it and you're like, wow, oh, I can definitely see where this is and that is. As opposed to when I used to do everything just from above, sometimes I couldn't really tell where my light source was. It was just this generalized blah, you know? So now my models you can pretty much tell.